And then what we'll do is we'll watch this movie. We're all here. Hello, friends. I'm going to go ahead and get started. We're here for the Holy Day, the Martyrdom of the Bob. And just for historic reasons, I want to just go over a quick timeline of the Bob. And in 1844, the Bob announced himself as the Gate. He claimed to be a messenger, and that he was announcing that there would be another messenger in the future. 6 short years later, the Bob's execution was ordered. And on the morning of July 9th, 1850, in Tabriz, the Bob was charged with apostasy and shot by order of the Prime Minister of the Persian Empire. Today we recognize this on July 10th due to the Gregorian calendar. One of the things that was very interesting to me when I went on pilgrimage was the story about after the Bob was executed, how his remains were discarded out the city gate, but then how for some 60 years until the Bob was eventually transferred to the Holy Land, his remains were kept by different Baha'is, and he was moved around and with reverence, of course, because of his stature in our faith. And then he was laid to rest in the Holy Land. Today, we're going to watch a video of this historic martyrdom of the Bob. And this was a video during COVID that was created by the Baha'is of Canada, and it was for the Baha'i House of Worship for North America. I felt it was a very befitting program. It's very diverse. There's a Black MC guiding the program as the pupil of the eye. He guides light into our eyes. Equal age, ethnicity mix, and lots of young people, all collectively delivering an elevated audio, visual, and commemorating experience. The video is a timely response in words and action to the world we Baha'is envision. And without further ado, we'll go ahead and start this.
A commemoration of the Martyrdom of the Bob, prepared for the Baha'i House of Worship for North America.
If thou lovest me, turn away from thyself. If thou seekest my pleasure, regard not thine own. If thou lovest me, turn away from thyself. If thou seekest my pleasure, regard not thine own, that thou mayst die in me, and I may eternally live in thee, that thou mayst die in me, and I may eternally live in thee. O Son of Man, O Son of Man.
Oh Señor, a ti acudo en busca de amparo, y hacia todos tus signos vuelvo mi corazón. Oh Señor, ya esté de viaje o en mi hogar, en mi profesión o en mi trabajo, pongo toda mi confianza en ti. Concédeme, pues, tu ayuda, que es suficiente para hacerme independiente de todas las cosas. Oh tú, a quien nadie supera en tu misericordia. Confiéreme mi parte, oh Señor, según tu voluntad, y haz que quede satisfecho con cualquier cosa que tú hayas ordenado para mí. Tuya es la autoridad absoluta para ordenar. El Bab.
الله ای خداوند مهربان، قلوب را به نور هدایت کبری منور فرما، جانها را به بشارت عظمی حیات بخش، چشمها را به مشاهده انوارت روشن کن، گوشها را به سماع ندایت شنوا فرما، ما را در ملکوت تقدیست داخل نما و به نفسات روح القدس زنده کن، حیات ابدیه بخش، کمالات آسمانی عطا فرما. خداوندا جانهای ما را فدای خود کن و ما را روح جدید کرم نما، قوتی آسمانی ده، سرور ابدی بخش، موفق به خدمت عالم انسانی نما، سبب الفت بین قلوب کن. خداوندا ما را از خواب بیدار فرما و عاقل و هوشیار کن، تا به اسرار کتاب مقدست واقف گردیم و به رموز کلماتت پی بریم. تویی مقتدر، تویی دهنده، تویی مهربان.
Say, God sufficeth, all things above all things, and nothing in the heavens or in the earth but God sufficeth. Verily, he is in himself, the knower, the sustainer, the omnipotent.
Baha'is believe that the Bab is a messenger of God, just like Muhammad or Christ or Krishna. He was born in Iran, what used to be called Persia, in the mid-1800s, and he arose to proclaim what we think of as a twofold mission. The first element of his mission was to renew that bond of love which connects every human being with their Creator. And the second was to proclaim the advent of a new manifestation of God, one who would usher humanity into a new stage, a new era of its existence. Now, this message swept through Iran like a wildfire. It attracted the love and admiration of several thousands of people, but others, notably those who were members of the clergy or some members of the government, were threatened by his message. And so they arose and used all their power to try to extinguish his faith. So, because of this, he was made to suffer numerous banishments from one part of Iran to another, imprisonment, as well as public humiliation. When the enemies of his faith realized that none of these instruments could manage to destroy this newborn faith, they decided to take it to the next level. And in July of 1850, the Grand Vizier of the Shah of Persia at the time gave the order to execute him.
Allahumma ya Ilahi, Kashin Ibrahim Torah, Hazar Asmawi Tao در راه محبت تو قربانی می نمود یا محبوبی یا مقصود قلبی محبت این احمد که بنده تو علی محمد او را در راه تو قربانی کرد هیچگاه نمیتواند شعله محبت تو را که دل قلبش فروخته خاموش شد تا جانم دل پای تو حساب نشود و تا جسمم برای تو به حق و خون نغلطد و تا سینم برای تو دفع گلول و های بیشمار نشود استراب من تسکین نیابد و دل من راحتی نپذیرد
上帝啊，你解除一切困难，驱散一切折磨，你消除一切悲哀，解放一切奴隶，救赎所有灵魂。主啊，借你的恩惠解救我，将我视为你得救的仆人。
O peoples of the earth, verily the resplendent light of God had appeared in your midst, invested with the unerring book, that ye may be guided aright to the ways of peace, and by the leave of God step out of the darkness into the light and onto this far extended path of truth, the path.
There's one aspect to the story of the martyrdom of the Bab that is quite unique so far as I know. That is the story of Anis, a young man who was locked away by his father during the time that the Bab's teachings and his person and his followers were causing such an uproar in the land at the time because of his revelation. He broke out of his father's home and made his way to the Bab and threw himself at the feet of the Bab and begged not to be removed from his person. The Bab was surrounded by loved ones and devout followers, and the Bab said that rather than being killed by the hands of his enemy, he would wish to be killed by the hands of one of his friends. And you can only imagine those who were already in such pain and disbelief that they were going to lose their Lord shied away. They would not think a second of harming their beloved. But one of the members of the group stood up and with full confidence said, "I am ready to carry out whatever you command." And that was Anis. Well, you could imagine that the group pulled him back and were shocked and dismayed that somebody would arise to hurt the Bab. But the Bab addressed Anis and said, "Rest assured, you will be with me."
Arise and rest assured that you will be with me. Tomorrow you shall witness what God has decreed. Rejoice, Anis, the hour is approaching in this very city. Rest assured, this promise I give you will be fulfilled. Had you believed in me? Had you believed in me? I myself will follow you and will join you in the realm of eternity. Arise in His name. Arise in His name. You are the bearers of the name of God in this day. Heed not your weaknesses and frailty, gaze upon the Almighty, and arise in His name, and arise in His name.
When I think about Anis and his utter devotion to the Bab, that he would stand up and not think twice about carrying out the wish of the Bab, and yet the Bab's entire message, and indeed the understanding of living a spiritual life, is that the body is only temporary. Our real being, our true reality is spiritual, and our true home is the world to come. And knowing that the body is the limitation of the spirit, There is no reason that Anis would need to concern himself with the body. He was attached and adored the Bab for his message, his spirit, and his command.
So it's 9th of July 1850, the morning. The Bab and his two followers, one is his secretary and the other is young Anis, are in his cell, and he's dictating his last message to his secretary. While he's doing this, the commander of the regiment, which was to execute his order, Samkhan, comes to him because he has been seized by a feeling of fear, because he is worried that he is putting a man of God to death, and he's afraid of attracting the wrath of God as a result. The Bab says to him that if his intention is sincere, God would surely save him from committing this act. So he tells Samkhan to go ahead and carry out his order. While he is still dictating his last message, one of the guards comes to him to take him to the execution ground. The Bab accepts to be led to the execution ground, but boldly declares that until he is finished his work, no power on earth will be able to stop him. So he is led, he and Anis, to the place of execution. At this place, Samkhan orders his guards to pound a nail into a post and to suspend two ropes from that post, one for Anis, one for the Bab, and to suspend these two individuals from that post. After that, he organizes his regiment into 3 rows, each of 250 soldiers, and with a heavy heart, he issues the order, fire.
Dis, Dieu suffit à tout, au-dessus de tout. Rien, ni sur les cieux, ni sur la terre, sauf Dieu, ne peut suffire. En vérité, il est en lui-même celui qui sait, celui qui soutient, l'omnipotent.
Thy name is my healing, oh my God, and remembrance of thee is my remedy. Nearness to thee is my hope, and love for thee is my companion. Thy mercy to me is my healing and my succor in both this world and the world to come. Thy very art the all-bountiful, the all-knowing, the all-wise. The firing of these 750 muskets left a thick black smoke that traveled over the crowd. When the smoke was cleared, the crowd was absolutely astonished to see Anis standing in front of them unharmed and the Bab nowhere to be found. After a frantic search to find the Bab, he was found back in his cell, finishing his dictation that he had been interrupted from before. He turned to the guard and told him that his work was now finished, and the guard could do with him what he pleased. The guard led the Bab back to the barracks, and there Samkhan, amazed by the events that had just taken place and remembering the Bab's words to her earlier, refused to do anything against the Bab, even if it put in danger his station or his life. He ordered his regiment out of the barracks. A new regiment volunteered and prepared to fire. As this happened, the Bab turned to the crowd and said, "O wayward generation, had you believed in me, every one of you would have followed in the example of this youth, who stood in rank above most of you, and would have willingly sacrificed himself in my path. The day will come when you will have recognized me. That day I shall have ceased to be with you." Once again, the bob and niece are suspended in front of the agitated crowd. Once again, the order is given. Fire!
Glory be to thee, O God. Thou art the God who hath existed before all things, who will exist after all things, and will last beyond all things. Thou art the God who knoweth all things, and is supreme over all things. Thou art the God who dealeth mercifully with all things, who judgeth between all things, and his vision embraces all things. Thou art God, my Lord, thou art aware of my position, thou dost witness my inner and outer being. Grant thy forgiveness unto me, and unto the believers who respond to thy call. Be thou my sufficing helper against the mischief of whosoever may desire to inflict sorrow upon me or wish me ill. Verily thou art the Lord of all created things. Thou dost suffice everyone, while no one can be self-sufficient without thee. The Bob.
O Lord, unto thee I repair for refuge, and toward all thy signs I set my heart. O Lord, whether traveling or at home, and in my occupation or in my work, I place my whole trust in thee. Grant me then thy sufficing help, so as to make me independent of all things, O thou who art unsurpassed in thy mercy. Bestow upon me my portion, O Lord, as thou pleasest, and cause me to be satisfied with whatsoever thou hast ordained for me. Thine is the absolute authority to command. The Bob.
So when the smoke clears, the crowd that had assembled all around the square of Tabriz looks expectantly to see what has happened. And unfortunately, what they find is that the body of Anis and the Bab have been completely shattered. But you know what's interesting is that all this volley of bullets barely even scratched their faces. So you have these pristine faces which are filled with so much peace. But following after this horrendous act, a great storm of dust moves throughout the whole of Tabriz, and there's a great quaking, and the whole crowd is filled with fear. And they begin to wonder, what have they done? But it's too late. The guards were ordered to take his body and the body of Anis to throw them on a river outside of the city. And the intention was to heap further indignities upon the Bab and to further discredit his faith. But the resourcefulness of his followers would not let that happen. They managed to secure his body in the dead of night and to hide it away for almost 60 years until it was safely conveyed to its final resting place on Mount Carmel in the Holy Land. Now, over the course of the 20th century, a lot of effort was done to erect a beautiful mausoleum in that place. And that has become a place of pilgrimage for people for all the walks of life and all the corners of this world. It stands as an eloquent testimony to the power of the cause of God to overcome even the most horrific oppression, even the most horrific cruelty that the mind of a human being can create. The praise which hath dawned from thy most august self, and the glory which hath shone forth from thy most effulgent beauty, rest upon thee, O thou who art the manifestation of grandeur, and the King of eternity, and the Lord of all who are in heaven and on earth. I testify that through thee the sovereignty of God and his dominion, And the majesty of God and his grandeur were revealed. And the day stars of ancient splendor have shed their radiance in the heaven of thine irrevocable decree. And the beauty of the unseen hath shone forth above the horizon of creation. I testify, moreover, that with but a movement of thy pen thine injunction be thou hath been enforced, and God's hidden secret hath been divulged, and all created things have been called into being, and all their revelations have been sent down. I bear witness, moreover, that through thy beauty the beauty of the adored one hath been unveiled, and through thy face the face of the desired one hath shone forth, and that through a word from thee thou hast decided between all created things, causing them who are devoted to thee to ascend unto the summit of glory, and the infidels to fall into the lowest abyss. I bear witness that he who hath known thee hath known God, and he who hath attained thy presence hath attained unto the presence of God. Great, therefore, is the blessedness of him who hath believed in thee and in thy signs, and hath humbled himself before thy sovereignty, and hath been honored with meeting thee, and hath attained the good pleasure of thy will, and circled around thee, and stood before thy throne. Woe betide him that hath transgressed against thee, and hath denied thee, and repudiated thy signs, and gainsaid thy sovereignty, and risen up against thee, and walked proud before thy face, and hath disputed thy testimonies, and fled from thy rule and thy dominion, and been numbered with the infidels whose names have been inscribed by the fingers of thy behest upon the holy tablets. Waft then unto me, O my God and my beloved, from the right hand of thy mercy and thy loving kindness, the holy breaths of thy favors, that they may draw me away from myself, and from the world and unto the court of thy nearness and thy presence. Potent art thou to do what pleaseth thee. Thou truly hast been supreme over all things. The remembrance of God and his praise, and the glory of God and his splendor rest upon thee, O thou who art his beauty. I bear witness that the eye of creation hath never gazed upon one wronged like thee. Thou wast immersed all the days of thy life beneath the ocean of tribulation. At one time thou wast in chains and fetters. At another thou wast threatened by the sword of thine enemies. Yet, despite all this, thou didst enjoin upon all men to observe what had been prescribed unto thee by him who is the all-knowing, the all-wise. May my spirit be a sacrifice to the wrongs thou dost suffer, and my soul be a ransom for the adversities thou didst sustain. I beseech God, by thee, and by them whose faces have been illumined with the splendors of the light of thy countenance, and who, for love of thee, have observed all whereunto they were bidden, to remove the veils that have come in between thee and thy creatures, and to supply me with the good of this world and the world to come. Thou art in truth the Almighty, the most exalted, the all-glorious, the ever-forgiving, the most compassionate. Bless thou, O Lord my God, the divine lote tree and its leaves, and its boughs and its branches, and its stems and its offshoots, as long as thy most excellent titles will endure, and thy most august attributes will last. Protect it then from the mischief of thy aggressor and the hosts of tyranny. Thou art, in truth, the Almighty, the most powerful. Bless thou also, O my Lord, thy servants and thy handmaidens who have attained unto thee. Thou truly art the all-bountiful, whose grace is infinite. No God is there save thee, the ever forgiving, the most generous.
We will now like to open the floor to anybody who would like to offer a prayer on behalf of the Bob. Oh God, my beloved, my heart's desire. Oh God.